Laguna now, and it's setting an absolutely cracking pace. Some people have been worried about reliability of the Renaults, but they look very steady to me. Headlights on. And now we're looking at the back of the 89 car, which of course is the Ford Mondeo of Jenny Thompson, Aaron McGill and Terry Skeen. They seem to be having a bit of brake trouble.
They're brushing the threads there, Murray, as well. I don't know that couldn't have indicated it might have been a cross thread. The wheel might have come loose, and we saw something rubbing, but it's not normal that you have the wire brush on the threads unless you're trying to get rid of some steel left over from the wheel nut.
Jenny Thompson started the race in this car, Alan, and there's been no driver change, so she is still at the wheel. When they do change, Terry Skeen will take over. David Tapp with some more news from the Volvo pit.
Yes, Gary, the Volvo team are not overly concerned with the problems that Cameron McLean was suffering with the steering. They describe it to me as just being a little bit of play in the steering rack. They put the new tyres on and the fuel in and sent him back out again.
And this is the whole Volvo, the complete Volvo, because you'll remember that Jim Richards, unlike this one, as we watch the back of it, we can see the trim over the rear of the car is intact, whereas on Jim Richards' car, which has now moved up into 9th position, incidentally, they've lost that rear trim, and you can see some of the mechanicals at the back of the car. And we're on lap 19 now, with Jason Plato's lead increased to 19 seconds appropriately over Paul Morris's BMW. Peter Brock is some 14 seconds in 3rd position now behind the BMW, ahead of Jeff Brabham's BMW. Patrick,
and this is what happens when you have pit stops with a lot of people running around the car, and the fellow that should have been in charge didn't double check the bonnet pins, and that would have given them a real fright. It's nothing worse, probably could have even cracked the windscreen. This is the kiss of death for any mechanic.
Is this 88 or 89?
We can't quite see the number, but if it was the 89 car...
Well, I can tell you, thanks to my diligent research, I can tell you from the yellow mirrors that it is car 89.
Oh, that's Jenny Thompson.
Yes, which is Jenny Thompson's car. Great pity, because she's clearly out of the race. Jason Plato then leading. He's doing a sterling job, because he's gone out there from the beginning. If you remember, he started from 2nd on the grid and pushed Paul Morris very hard until he got past the BMW, and now he's fairly streaked away.
Now, let's have a look at this incident on replay here as Jenny Thompson had left the pits after a quick pit stop. Keep your eye on the right of screen. She emerges from the pit lane here. She wasn't going at tremendous speed, which was fortunate for her. Now, there it goes. Look at that. It was just not clipped down at all. Imagine if by some means it had stayed down, Alan, until she'd achieved some speed. That would have been horrendous.
At that pace, it would have smashed the windscreen for her, but it still given them a hell of a fright. It's happened to us all, and the reason I'm so chirpy about it, I've had it myself, and it's not fun. It's expensive, it's embarrassing, and they're going to have a lot of time to get that car back to the pits now.
This is the man who came off pole position, Paul Morris, in the BMW 320, fastest lap so far in the race of a 2:18.37. In the early dash, of course, they've managed to settle back into a more, well, I was going to say sedate, that's not the right word, it's about a second or lap slower, but into a race pace now of about 2:19, 2:19.5, somewhere in that vicinity. And Paul Morris knows, because he's been here so many times before, it's going to be a long, long day. In fact, the early overcast here at Bathurst has burnt off, and it's turning out to be a spectacularly nice day at the moment. It is not such a nice day, David Tapp, for John Cleland.
Certainly hasn't worked out the way that this team would have hoped, Gary Wilkinson. And John, there's nothing more frustrating from a racing driver's point of view than sitting in the pits like this so early and for so long.
Yeah, it's a big concern. I mean, obviously we're out of the job now, but it's frustrating because the car's been running like clockwork all week. Even the first stint there, I mean, it felt fine, no problem. Changing gear early, we were staying in touch. A little bit of a bad start because the clutch was slipping for some reason just on the start line. But as soon as it got off the way, we were fine, no problem. Car was good.
Ended up being a power steering failure?
Yeah, the power steering pump has just sort of blown itself apart, really. And yeah, you could just about drive one of these things without power steering because it's just not designed for that.
The problem's also here for the Bates Toyota, which actually has gone back into the race now.
I don't think there's any concern that anything will break on the BMW. They really have a very, very strong car, and they've got that heritage of long-distance races in Europe, and definitely nothing going to break. But they're running at a pace now that they will want to make sure that the Renault doesn't keep going, Murray.
And Peter Brock, you just saw the gap there between him and Paul Morris, is in third position. Here he is, we're riding with him now. A bit of a worry for him, actually, Alan, because he's in the Vauxhall Vectra, and we've seen what's happened to the other one with John Cleland sitting in the pits. He's only done 12 laps, and Jason Plato's on his 24th lap now. So the Vauxhall people will be hoping very much that they've only got one wobbly steering pump, won't they?
I think the beauty of the professional teams today, Murray, with the two-car teams, is that they have dedicated number of personnel on each car. And generally, a problem isn't replicated, but of course it could. They would be concerned, but maybe not overly worried. This car seems to be running very nicely. Peter's got it in a very nice flow. He is using the road beautifully. He's capturing every bit of tarmac that he can with a minimum of fuss, and going by people with reasonable ease. He's basically sat in this position most of the race. That was a little bit, I'm taking this if you don't mind. I am taking this corner, buddy, and you can make your own arrangement. 161
laps long. Jason Plato is 20 seconds ahead of Paul Morris's BMW, which is 17 seconds ahead of Peter Brock's Vauxhall Vectra, as we watch the change there. And Jeff Brabham is in fourth place, so there's two BMWs in the top four. Patrick Watts in the Peugeot is in fifth position, and in sixth place, Stephen Richards Nissan.
Yes, well, Jeff just got by there on Forest Elbow. A lot of brake lights being applied on the Camry, and I think it was only a matter of time for Jeff to get by. He's done so quickly, got onto Conrad, and he wants to sprint away and get back up onto the bumper bar of Peter Brock.
Alan Jones is really itching to get behind the wheel. You'd be very pleased with Graham Moore's effort so far.
He's doing a really good job. He's lapping very consistently and driving strictly according to plan, and it's just going so good at the moment.
When did you make the decision not to start the race?
Oh, well, Didier, the team manager, made that decision last night. We sat down and had a talk, and Graham hasn't done as many laps in the car as what I'd done. So, you know, we decided it'd be good for Graham to start the race, and he's doing a great job.
And, of course, so is the other Renault as well. You must be very impressed with the professionalism of this team.
Yeah, they are very, very professional. I mean, I think it goes without saying, with all due respect to the others, they're probably the best team here, and I'm very fortunate to be in it.
Good luck when you get in the car.
Thank you.
You saw that they got the Jenny Thompson Ford Mondeo back into the pit lane to do something about that errant bonnet. And at the present moment now, we have got the top 8 drivers on the same lap. They're on lap 25 as the bonnet pin is replaced there. And I bet the chap who didn't replace it the last time is skulking around the back of the pit somewhere with his head in his hand.
Jenny Thompson still driving. They haven't made a driver change. They'll be back on the track shortly. And there are the two Audis, the Brad Jones team Audis. Brad behind the wheel of the car in front, Cameron McConville driving the second entry at this point. They're a little bit back in the field in 7th and 8th positions, but just keep an eye out for them as the race unwinds.
Well, my driver, which is what Brad Jones is, what I regard him after my laps yesterday, told me yesterday that he was going to drive a very cautious race at the beginning of it. I didn't expect it to be as cautious as this, to be quite honest with you, because he is in 7th place and he's well down. The Audi is a very strong, very reliable car. He wanted it to be wet today. It doesn't look as though it's going to happen for him, because with that four-wheel drive, you get a big advantage if the tarmac is wet.
And car 89, the Jenny Thompson car, has been black flagged, we understand.
24 laps gone out of 161, and Jason Plato continues to lead the great race. Second position is Morris. In third position, Peter Brock at the wheel of the Vectra. Fourth position, Brabham, and in fifth position, Patrick Watts.
6th place, Stephen Richards in the Nissan Primera. 7th, Brad Jones in the Audi. Cameron McConville, the second Audi entry, is in 8th spot. Then the Volvo of Jim Richards. 10th placing is held down by Graham Moore in the second of the Renault Laguna entries. Jason Plato in the Williams Renault Laguna and this car has performed faultlessly all week here. Alain Menu was the man who set the pace early in qualifying before Jeff Brabham came along and stole fastest time late on Friday. Then Paul Morris came out, blew them all away in the top 10 qualifying yesterday. But at the start of the race today, Morris, as you just saw in our first hour highlights, won the start, but Plato obviously under instructions to put the pressure on early.
It's interesting the way as well that they split the driving duties with this car. Menu was given the job of doing all the qualifying and setting the hot lap. Plato was given the job of making sure the car was set up properly for the race, hence the fact that he started in the car. And just by way of proving a point, his quickest lap is a 16.8. That's only a matter of a few tenths away from the fastest lap that Jason Plato set. The difference is that Plato did it with full tanks on lap 5 of the race.
But this is the Nigel Barkley Blair Smith car that you'll see being worked on. I was going to say it's quite incredible, that lap of Jason Plato's, because that's nearly some 4 seconds faster than the previous lap record.
Let's see what's happening down there with David Tapp.
Yes, thank you very much, Gary. It looks like a fairly routine pit stop and driver change. A beehive of activity, a full 80-litre quantity of fuel going in. It takes about 37 seconds for the full 80 litres to go into these tanks, because they have a 27mm restrictor on the fuel inlet. And of course on the other side of the car, it really is set up to design to accept the overflow, and that's how they obviously know the tank is full, and that's happened fairly rapidly.
But here we are now. Look, this is good. We're looking at Jason Plato now. He's 29 years old and he comes from Oxford in England. Started off his career as a kart champion, then he was Formula Renault champion. Then he went up into Formula 3 to drive for the Van Diemen team, which was most unsuccessful, before he switched to the Renault Spider category, where he was champion. And while he was with the Renault Spider team, he was badgering all the time for a works drive. He got it this year, and his reward was to win 2 races in the British Touring Car Championship.
Well, they had to reward him. He won 10 of the 14 rounds of the Renault Spider
Absolutely, yeah.
They're going to reward him after this stint, even if he does nothing else today. He's brought this team into the lead to the first pit stop.
Well, you say after this stint, and I noticed that the crew are ready to receive the car as Jason Plato there. You can see him at work as he makes his way over the top of the mountain. It's also interesting, I notice he's done 29 laps, he's on his 30th lap. The way that different teams split the race into sections. We've noticed with Tim Harvey taking an early splash and dash pit stop and started with a light fuel load. And the Williams Renault team here have waited for 30 laps, Alan.
Yes, and I think if they could, they would love it to go to 32, so that they would only have to have the race divided into 5 segments. Jeff Brabham shadowing Brock, coming down through the approach to quite gingerly. You can hear how softly the engine has gone on to the BMW 320. He's picked it up now, chasing Brocky down through into Forest Elbow, and Peter being quite cautious through that corner. I don't think these fellows are anywhere near their potential, Murray.
I always wish you could tilt the picture or something when you're going up the mountain. Ah, here they are. Here is Jason Plato now.
So he's in on his 31st. That's not bad going. They'll pick that up later in the day. So close to 32, it doesn't matter.
Patrick Welsh is on the spot.
Gary, yes, regulation stop and tyres, as we see Menu getting in, and he'll throw seat replacement in. Have a look how quickly this is done by the Williams team. It is fantastic stuff. Full tank of fuel, tyres on already. Alarm Menu being strapped in now. It's getting very, very hectic down here, because Vectras are due in, and they're in the next pit up. The Cleland car has been moved forward, and here comes Brocky, so it's going to get very, very tight here. But this has been perfect pit stop. There's a lot of crushing here.
Well, there is the Vectra.
Vauxhall is in, the Vectras are in. Menu is right to go. He's out.
Right, let's go to David Tapp. David Tapp is with the Brock car.
Yes, indeed, a beehive of activity down here. Derek Warwick preparing to get in the car. A very good stint by Peter Brock, which saw him in the top half dozen in the race at this stage. They're taking a little time. Derek Warwick patting Peter Brock on the back, saying, "Good job, son." And they're now backing the car out. Hopefully there's no problems here.
I don't like the look of this.
No, it doesn't look good at all. Warwick was preparing to get in. There is some smoke coming from the right-hand front wheel. Maybe they're just trying to reposition the car better, because Brock came in rather hastily because of the number of people around the pit area. But there's certainly no sense of urgency here. Derek Warwick not even bothering getting in the car, so this could be a real problem.
I can tell from, I know Derek Warwick so well, I can tell from his body language that that is a gesture of despair. It looks to me, sadly, as though Derek Warwick is not even going to be able to get into the Vectra, and that something is, I do hope I'm wrong, but just look at the way he's standing, look at the way they're manoeuvring the car backwards and forwards by hand, and he shakes his head, and it looks as though Derek, having come all the way to Australia, is not even going to compete in the great race. But